8 minutes to 8 on the Breakfast Show. There's a call for people using mobility scooters to be given more training because of the number of accidents the vehicles are involved in. There are around 300,000 scooters in use across the country. They've got a top speed of about 8 miles an hour. But police in the Midlands say that there have been 30 accidents involving mobility scooters in the last year, and that figures could be much higher as some forces don't record the figure in isolation. Let's talk to Tony Armstrong, who's from Living Streets, a campaign group for pedestrians and public spaces. Morning, Tony.
Morning.
You're not a fan of the mobility scooter, then?
Oh, well, no, actually, we think that mobility scooters have given independence to many, many thousands of people, and it keeps people active for longer. So we think they're very good. What's happening, though, is that more and more of these vehicles are being put onto pavements or onto the road because we've got an ageing population. More of us have mobility problems. We need to plan ahead. We need to think about how our streets are going to be for more vehicles on the road, and that means potentially more training for those heavier vehicles, more enforcement of things like speed limit on pavements, and making sure that our streets are able to handle them, so there's enough space, there's dropped curbs in the right kind of place. You're
not suggesting we put these things on the road, though, are you? Because, I mean, it frightens me when a 38-ton truck passes me in the car. If I was on one of these things, I think I'd be frightened to death.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are designed to go on the road as well as on the pavements anyway, perhaps in cycle lanes and things like that. What's clear is the speed limit on the pavements, even for those vehicles which can travel faster, theoretically, is 4 miles an hour. One of the things we suspect is that lots of the collisions that are happening are because of people driving beyond that speed limit.
Right.
Some of the heavier vehicles can go up to 8 miles an hour, which doesn't sound a lot, but on a pavement when people are walking, that is quite high, and it does cause potential problems.
Would you like to see training? Would you like to see some kind of test and some kind of recognition of their ability to handle this vehicle? Because it is a vehicle after all, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, people are travelling in the vehicles, and that can potentially cause harm. The principle I would use is that if it can cause harm, then you need to make sure there's regulations such as training. So for those class of vehicles that are heavier, the ones that go faster, they have to be registered anyway with the DVLA, as car drivers do. So we think that's the opportunity to say, actually, has there been adequate training for that user, and also has that person got insurance? Both of those things, I think, would make the streets safer and keep everybody able to use their mobility scooters in peace.
Interesting. Tony, thanks for that. Tony Armstrong from Living Streets, a campaign group for pedestrians and public spaces. Listening to that and joining us in the studio is John Connolly, who's the director of Mobility Nation in Earlston. They sell about 500 of these scooters every year, so I think it's fair to say you know what you're talking about, John. Thanks for being with us this morning. What do you think about what Tony's saying? I mean, does he? It seemed quite reasonable what he was saying. Does he have a point? If these things are they're quite a mass to them. If they're travelling at 8 miles an hour and it took your legs away, you'd certainly feel it, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. I mean, there is law in this country that says Class 3 mobility scooters, which is what Tony's talking about. They must be limited to 4 mile an hour on pavements. Now, I think it's, as Tony said, it's a point of enforcement because people are travelling faster occasionally in urban areas like shopping centres and high streets. So there's that aspect to it also. And the other thing that Tony touched on was the public liability insurance, and I'd certainly back calls to make it compulsory for all Class 3 vehicles, because you can use them on the road as well.
These are the much bigger end of the market.
Absolutely, yeah, they've got the full lighting kit and everything. You occasionally see them on the roads. We don't recommend, as a company, that people do use them on the roads, because as you quite rightly said, you can have lorries coming past at 50 mile an hour, and it's not a good situation to be in.
And I've got to say, and it's all very well saying, oh yes, put them all on the road, but you've got to look at, and I'm not blaming councils going in that, but you look at the state of potholes, you look at curbs, you look at drains. Cycling is bad enough, isn't it? You would have to come out a significant way in a four-wheel vehicle. What about training? Because you're a responsible company, you're selling 500 of these odd a year, and you're not going to just go to them, there you go, see you later, bye-bye. So you will give them some kind of initial familiarity. But would you back calls for training as well, do you think?
I would back calls for voluntary training, but in terms of making it compulsory, I think that would be a very bad thing. You see, as you say, we sell hundreds of these a year, and we get to hear all sorts of stories about the background why people have come to see us. And it was just last week, a lady came to see us to buy a scooter, and we asked her, why did it take her so long? She'd been housebound for 2 years, and it was only because a local neighbour had brought her to see us. If she hadn't bought a scooter from us, she'd still be housebound.
So you think that could be a barrier if people are then right, you've got to take a test, which frightens a lot of people.
Absolutely. Any obstacles that you put in the way of somebody like that, especially as you get on in life, as you get older in life, they can seem insurmountable. And we think it would be a bad thing. It's always about striking the right balance between legislation and the rights of mobility users. So we think voluntary, yes. If the demand is there, then that'd be a good thing. But making it compulsory, I think that would be a negative.
John, good to talk to you. Thanks for joining us this morning. John Connolly, who's Director of Mobility Nation in Earlsdale. I tell you what, if you're a user or you've been on the receiving end of somebody who's a user of one of these mobility scooters, let me know what you think. I'd like to hear your personal experiences this morning about these, particularly if you use them. And if you use yours on the road, I can only imagine I feel for cyclists on the road these days because, it can be such a harrowing experience. But to be on a mobility scooter, I'm not sure whether that would be a better situation or worse. Do let me know if you've got experience of that.
BBC Coventry and Warwickshire.